So I want you to imagine the phone rings. It's December 22nd.
Oh, man. Peak holiday stress right there.
Right. Exactly. We are talking exactly 3 days before Christmas. The house is probably smelling like pine needles and baking. The wrapping paper is out everywhere.
You're mentally running through your checklist of 100 things to do before the whole family descends on your house.
Yeah, the absolute peak of the holiday pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And, you pick up the phone and it's your child on the other end of the line.
Which usually means they forgot something or they need you to buy batteries.
Exactly. But instead of asking what time you're coming over or checking to see if you remembered to buy that specific toy for the grandkids, they ask you for a favor.
Okay.
A massive favor. They literally say, the best gift you could give me this year is simply not coming.
Oh, wow. That's a gut punch.
It's completely heartbreaking.
It really is, man. It's the exact opposite of what you are culturally and honestly biologically conditioned to expect in that moment. The rejection is just visceral.
Yeah, and for most people, that simple, devastating request would lead to a massive argument.
Or tears, or a desperate plea to drive over there right now and fix whatever went wrong.
Right. But the story we are diving into today is not about most people.
Definitely.
No. This is a deeply personal, true story about a man named Walter Higgins, and how his incredibly stoic response to that one heartbreaking phone call became the single thread that unraveled a massive, shockingly brazen financial crime.
A crime perpetrated from inside his own family, which is the wildest part.
It's insane. So to unpack this, we're looking at a really fascinating stack of sources for our deep dive today. We've gone through personal interview transcripts with Walter, Mecklenburg County court filings, North Carolina Real Estate Commission disciplinary records, and property deed histories.
It's a lot of paper trail for one family dispute.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore the collision of two completely different worlds. We're looking at how a lifetime of blue-collar intuition and calm strategic thinking can completely dismantle a sophisticated white-collar deception.
Because, this isn't just a story about real estate, though obviously real estate is definitely the prize at the center of the board here.
Right.
It is a fundamental case study in the psychology of trust. It's about the danger of underestimating the people around you based on, superficial metrics of success.
Yeah, the whole book by its cover thing.
Exactly. And most importantly, it's about the actual mechanics of a family fraud that is so bold, so reckless, that it relies entirely on the victim's love and unquestioning trust to succeed.
Which is just, it's so dark when you really think about it.
It is. So what we're really going to look at is how Walter's specific, lifelong background made him uniquely equipped to survive an ambush that would have ruined almost anyone else.
Yeah, so let's start with the man himself, right? Walter Higgins.
Right.
He is 66 years old, and for 38 of those years, he has been a structural steel contractor in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And we should be really clear about what that means.
Yeah, please do, because it's important.
We are not just talking about a guy who sat in an air-conditioned office reviewing blueprints. Walter is the guy who literally helped build half the downtown parking garages in Charlotte.
Like physically out there doing it.
Yes. He spent his life up on the iron. He actually jokes in one of the interviews that people constantly complain to him about not finding parking spots in the very garages he poured his sweat into building.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But, it's a crucial detail, right? Because it roots him in the physical, tactile reality of the city.
Exactly. He didn't just participate in the abstract economy. He literally built the physical infrastructure that holds the local economy up. He understands how things are put together piece by piece, bolt by bolt.
Right. And now, at 66, he spends his time puttering around his garage, refinishing old tool chests.
Which I love.
Yeah, his wife of 40 years, Carol, jokes that this is just a socially acceptable way of hoarding rust.
That's such a wife comment.
It really is. But to me, this tells us everything we need to know about Walter's worldview. Think about the steel he has worked with for nearly 4 decades.
You don't rush it.
You do not rush steel. You build it slowly, you build it carefully, and you build it to last. And that is exactly how Walter and Carol built their life.
Steady and solid.
Right. They married when he was 26 and she was 24, and they took the slow, steady route. A house in Steel Creek, 3 kids, and most importantly for our story, one very specific piece of property.
The 4 acres off Independence Boulevard.
Yes. Bought outright in 1987. Free and clear.
That phrase, man. Free and clear. We need to pause on that because it is the psychological bedrock of this entire narrative.
Go ahead, break that down for us.
You have to understand the profound psychological security that a piece of fully owned land represents to a man like Walter. He specifically mentions in his interviews that he never developed the land because he liked the feeling of knowing he owned something tangible without owing a dime to anyone.
Which is so rare these days.
Exactly. In the modern American economy, which is, almost entirely predicated on leveraging debt to acquire more assets, Walter's mindset is almost an antique.
Right, everyone's trying to leverage everything.
Exactly. But to a man who has worked with his hands, doing grueling physical labor where a mistake can literally cost you your life, debt is a chain. Equity, true, unencumbered physical ownership, that is absolute freedom.
Yeah, land like that doesn't need explaining to people who understand what it means to owe nobody anything.
Right. But that specific philosophy brings us directly into conflict with his son-in-law.
Bradley Ashworth. Let's look at Bradley.
Oh, Bradley.
Yeah. He is 38 years old, married to Walter's daughter, Kim, for 6 years, and they live in this upscale neighborhood called Valentine.
Very nice area. Lots of money.
Very nice. And Bradley is a commercial real estate agent.
Uh-huh.
And he's the kind of guy who every single Christmas, when Walter shows up with Carol's famous bourbon pecan pie, makes a condescending joke about Walter's truck being older than his marriage.
Which is just, it's framed as a joke, but it's a joke with real teeth.
Yeah.
It establishes a hierarchy in Bradley's mind. He is constantly signaling his perceived superiority over Walter.
But hold on, I want to challenge that dynamic for a second.
Yeah.
Because Bradley is a real estate agent in Charlotte.
Right.
So he knows exactly what 4 acres of prime commercial dirt on Independence Boulevard is worth.
Oh, he absolutely knows.
So is it really just a misunderstanding of Walter's wealth? Or is Bradley willfully blinding himself to Walter's intelligence so he can justify looking down on him?
That's a fantastic distinction. And I think it's likely a mix of both, driven by a classic error of translation between different socioeconomic cultures.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Bradley represents a world of leverage, of occurrences, of, moving imaginary money around on spreadsheets. In his world, success must be broadcast.
Right. The shiny new car, the huge house in Valentine.
Exactly. The aggressive networking events, the suits. So he looks at Walter's lack of display, the old truck, the rusty tool chests, and interprets it as a lack of sophistication. He willfully conflates humility with stupidity.
Which is a huge mistake.
A massive mistake. Bradley thinks because Walter doesn't speak the language of corporate real estate at the dinner table, Walter doesn't understand complex systems.
But Walter builds parking garages.
Yes. He understands load-bearing structures, stress points, hidden weaknesses, and foundational integrity better than anyone. Bradley severely underestimates the intellectual rigor required for a 38-year career in structural steel.
Well, that structural integrity is about to be tested, seriously tested. Let's move the timeline to 6 weeks before Christmas. A Sunday afternoon.
The setup of the Trojan horse.
Exactly. Bradley casually drops by Walter and Carol's house, and he brings a manila folder of what he calls storage unit paperwork.
And notice how he weaponizes the banality of the request.
Yeah, that's exactly the right word for it. It's supposedly a liability release for a shared unit off South Boulevard where the whole family keeps their artificial trees and holiday decorations.
So boring. So normal.
Right? Bradley tells Walter that his insurance company requires a signature from everyone who has physical access to the unit. So Walter is sitting at his own kitchen table. His son-in-law hands him a routine, boring form, and he signs it.
Without reading it.
He openly admits in the source material that he didn't read past the first paragraph. And for you listening right now, think about the last time you signed a liability waiver at a trampoline park or, clicked accept on an iTunes update.
Right. Did you read every single word?
No, because who scrutinizes a family storage unit release?
Almost no one does. And this is exactly why affinity fraud is so incredibly effective and honestly so devastating.
Explain affinity fraud for the listeners.
So we all have cognitive firewalls that go up when we interact with a stranger, right? A used car salesman or an unfamiliar business. Our brains allocate energy to skepticism.
We're on guard.
Exactly. But around family, in the comfort of your own kitchen, those firewalls are completely dismantled. We operate on a baseline assumption of mutual protection.
Yeah, you don't think your son-in-law is out to get you?
Right. And Bradley doesn't come in pitching a complicated financial instrument. He relies on the absolute mind-numbing nature of holiday decoration storage. It's a topic so trivial that the brain literally doesn't bother to allocate critical thinking resources to it.
It's basically invisible.
By using something so deeply uninteresting, Bradley bypasses every single one of Walter's typical defenses. He hijacks the trust inherent in the family dynamic to execute a covert legal maneuver.
But let's dig into why Bradley is doing this. Because transitioning from an annoying, flashy son-in-law to a straight-up felon requires a massive catalyst.
You don't just wake up and decide to steal $1 million from your father-in-law for no reason.
Right. And we find the motive in a casual conversation Kim has in November. She mentions lightly, almost like she's complaining about the weather, that Bradley's brokerage lost a massive commercial deal.
The Fort Mill deal.
Yeah, it's shopping center development out in Fort Mill. The anchor tenant backed out. But here is the kicker, and this is wild. They backed out only after Bradley's firm had already fronted $340,000 in earnest money against a commission that simply vanished into thin air.
This is the missing puzzle piece right here. This is the existential threat.
Can you break down the mechanics of that for a second? Because to a layman, why is an individual real estate agent on the hook for $340,000 of his firm's money just because a tenant walked away?
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
Yeah, it sounds crazy to a normal person, but in high-stakes commercial real estate, especially with aggressive younger brokers who want to play in the big leagues, they aren't always just acting as middlemen.
Okay.
Often, to secure a massive anchor tenant, say a huge national grocery chain, the brokerage or the specific agent will form a syndicate or an LLC to co-invest.
Oh, I see.
Right. They front the earnest money to lock in the land developers. They put their own skin in the game to guarantee a 7-figure commission on the back end. It's a total high-wire act of leverage.
And when it falls through?
When that anchor tenant bails, the entire capital stack collapses. The earnest money is forfeited to the landowner, and whoever fronted it is left holding the bag. The pressure Bradley must have been under from his partners or his creditors would have been suffocating.
So he's looking down the barrel of a $340,000 hole.
Exactly. And suddenly, he looks across the Thanksgiving table at his father-in-law, a man sitting on 4 acres of undeveloped commercial land directly on Independence Boulevard.
Which is completely unencumbered by debt.
Yes, it's worth nearly $1 million. And the temptation crystallizes into a plan. Bradley needs immediate liquidity, and Walter is sitting on a mountain of idle dirt.
So the trap is set. The motive is clear. Which brings us to December 22nd, 8:40 a.m., 3 days before Christmas.
The morning of the phone call.
Right. The scene is incredibly domestic. Walter is out in the yard refilling the bird feeder. Carol is sitting at the kitchen table doing her morning crossword puzzle. The phone rings. It's Kim.
And she delivers the line.
She says, "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you not to make it a whole thing." She asks for the best gift. For Walter to just not come for Christmas. She tells him that she and Bradley need some space, that things are complicated right now, and she just cannot handle a full house.
It is a phenomenal amount of emotional pressure to place on a parent.
I can't even imagine.
It's a calculated move by Bradley, designed to provoke a highly emotional, irrational response. Most parents would demand answers, create a scene, or rush over there immediately.
Which is probably what Bradley wanted.
Yes.
Right. A distraction.
Exactly. A massive family fight would completely muddy the waters of what Bradley is actually trying to accomplish in the background. It keeps everyone focused on the drama, not the paperwork.
But Walter's reaction is stunning. He doesn't beg. He doesn't argue. He doesn't demand to know what Bradley did. He simply says, "Of course, honey. Whatever you need." And he hangs up the phone.
This is our first real glimpse into Walter's absolute emotional control. Most guys would lose their minds.
Right. So Carol looks up from her crossword and says, "That didn't sound good." And Walter plays it off to her, says Kim just needs a quiet Christmas. But internally.
Internally, the alarm bells are going off.
Big time.
Yeah.
Walter feels a deep physical sense of wrongness in his chest. And the way he describes it in the interviews is pure poetry. He says it was the kind of wrong you get on a job site when a beam looks level, but your gut says measured anyway.
That is profound. It really speaks to the concept of tacit knowledge.
Explain that, because I think it's the core of how he catches Bradley.
So think about 38 years in the physical trades. Your brain is literally rewiring itself over decades to spot microscopic structural anomalies. You train your eyes to see when a fraction of an inch is off.
Because the consequences are huge.
Exactly. If a steel beam is slightly out of plumb, the entire parking garage could collapse and people could literally die. Walter is taking that deeply ingrained physical intuition and applying it to human behavior.
Wow.
Kim's story sounded level. The excuse makes structural sense. But his internal alarm bells are screaming that the foundation is cracked. So what does he do? He decides to measure it anyway.
And notice how he measures it.
Yeah.
He doesn't panic. He doesn't call Kim back and interrogate her. He investigates. He looks for a data point to confirm or deny his intuition without alerting the suspect.
Exactly. He's methodical.
Right. So he calls his accountant of 11 years, Ellen Proser. And he doesn't call screaming about a conspiracy. He calls under the guise of casual conversation, just passing the time, asking if she had sent Kim and Bradley anything recently for their end-of-year taxes.
And Ellen, completely innocently, reveals a massive glowing red flag.
Yeah, she casually mentions that she saw a calendar invite on the shared digital family calendar. This is a calendar that Bradley had set up for everyone earlier that year.
Which is just classic, right? The tech-savvy son-in-law setting up the family calendar, probably specifically to monitor everyone's movements.
Oh, almost definitely.
Yeah.
But Ellen sees an invite for 10 a.m. on December 24th, Christmas Eve. The event is titled Family Paperwork at Kim's House. And the invite includes a notary named Priya Chandrasekharan.
And this is where the entire house of cards begins to collapse, simply because of the specific professional ecosystem they all inhabit in Charlotte.
Right, because Ellen knows Priya.
Exactly. Ellen recognizes that notary's name. And why does the accountant know the notary? Because Priya Chandrasekharan is not a mobile notary who drives around in a Honda Civic validating family wills or, storage unit releases.
He's a heavy hitter.
She is a major player in the Charlotte real estate scene. She does closings for Ellen's other commercial clients. She specifically executes deed transfers for shopping centers and office parks.
Boom, right there. Why is a high-level commercial real estate notary booked for a house visit to do routine family paperwork on Christmas Eve?
It makes absolutely zero sense.
Right. The structural beam is entirely out of plumb.
It is the smoking gun. It bridges the gap between Walter's intuitive feeling that something is wrong and hard, verifiable evidence that a commercial transaction is being disguised as a domestic family matter.
So Walter hangs up the phone with Ellen. He pieces it together. He immediately calls Denise Callahan, his attorney of 2 decades.
The bedrock people. Accountant, then lawyer.
Exactly. And he asks her a question in a voice he says he didn't even fully recognize. He asks if there's any power of attorney on file with his name on it at the county. And then he waits.
That had to be an agonizing wait.
40 minutes later, Denise calls back. And she confirms his absolute worst nightmare. 3 weeks ago, a general durable power of attorney with full financial authority was filed. And it names Bradley Ashworth as the agent.
Man, this is a catastrophic document to have filed against you without your knowledge. General durable power of attorney isn't just a permission slip to pick up a package at the post office.
Walk us through the actual mechanics of that. Like, what can Bradley legally do with that piece of paper?
With a general durable power of attorney, Bradley effectively becomes Walter in the eyes of the law.
Wow.
Yeah, he has the legal authority to open bank accounts in Walter's name, empty existing retirement accounts, take out loans using Walter's credit history, and, most crucially for Bradley's $340,000 problem, execute a deed transfer to sell or leverage the 4-acre Independence Boulevard property.
So he could literally just give the land to himself.
He can literally sign the deed over to a buyer or to an LLC he controls, and the county will record it as if Walter himself signed it.
That is terrifying. And the mechanics of the forgery itself are just chilling.
Yeah.
Denise pulls the actual scanned documents from the county database. The storage unit release that Walter actually signed at his kitchen table.
When he didn't read.
Right?
Yeah.
That was a single page. The power of attorney that was filed, that was 3 pages long. But the crucial detail, the piece of evidence that breaks the whole thing open, is the notarization block at the very bottom of the power of attorney.
Yeah.
Denise notices it was printed in a completely different font size than the rest of the 3-page document. Meaning, Bradley literally took the single page Walter signed for the storage unit, trimmed it or scanned it, typed the legal notary block onto the bottom of that already signed page, and then attached it to the back of a 2-page power of attorney he drafted himself.
It's remarkably brazen, and yet it's incredibly sloppy.
Yeah. How did he expect to get away with different font sizes?
Because he assumes that since it's a family matter, and because he's filing it in the massive, relentless flow of county paperwork, no clerk is going to scrutinize the font kerning or the page continuity.
They just stamp it and move on.
Exactly. He relies entirely on the momentum of the bureaucracy to slide this through, and honestly, it usually works. Bureaucracies aren't designed to catch affinity fraud. They are designed to process paperwork as fast as possible.
So Walter gets this news. Let's just freeze this moment. He has just discovered that his own son-in-law has committed a massive felony to steal his most valuable asset.
His life savings, basically.
Right. And worse, he's planning to execute the final step of the theft on Christmas Eve, while intentionally manipulating Kim into isolating Walter from the family so he won't find out.
It's evil. It really is.
Now, I want to ask you, the listener, what would you do in this exact moment? Because if someone tells me my life savings is currently in the process of being stolen by a family member, I am not sitting still. I am calling 911. I am driving over to Bradley's house to kick the door in.
Oh, absolutely. Red alert.
But what does Walter do? He sits at his kitchen table in total silence for 4 solid minutes. He just stares out the window at the half-full bird feeder as his coffee goes completely cold.
I have to push back here. Why doesn't he just call the police right then and there? How is he not exploding?
Because Walter recognizes the difference between a civil dispute and a criminal mechanism.
What do you mean?
Look, if he calls 911 right then, the police show up at Bradley's house. Bradley shows them a legally filed, officially stamped power of attorney. The patrol officers aren't going to conduct a forensic font analysis on Christmas Eve. Right, they're not detectives.
Exactly. They're going to look at the paperwork, look at the angry father-in-law, and they're going to say, this is a civil matter, take it up in family court, and they will leave.
Oh, I see.
Walter isn't in shock. He's planning. This is the fundamental difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is emotional. It's the panic, the screaming, the calling 911. Responding is calculated.
So he's literally calculating.
During those 4 minutes, Walter is assessing the structural integrity of his own life and mapping out a sequence of actions required to secure it. When you build a massive structure, if you identify a critical failure in the steel, you don't start wildly swinging a sledgehammer.
You'd bring the whole thing down on yourself.
Exactly. You isolate the fault, you calculate the required counterforces, and you brace the structure. That 4 minutes of silence is the sound of a master contractor doing the mental math of demolition.
The mental math of demolition. Man, that is incredible. And once the math is done, the arsenal is assembled. Walter picks up the phone and calls his best friend since 1993, Sal Denning.
Enter Sal. I love Sal.
Sal is the man. These guys go way back. They worked the rail yard together off Statesville Avenue before Walter even got into steelwork. Sal answers on the second ring. Walter tells him everything. And Sal's reaction proves exactly why they're best friends.
Right. He doesn't waffle.
Sal doesn't offer empty platitudes. He doesn't say, oh, maybe there's a misunderstanding. He immediately recognizes the severity and the malicious intent. Sal tells Walter, Bradley is a real estate agent. He knows exactly how a power of attorney works. He knows exactly what altering a signed document after the fact means legally. This isn't confusion. This is a plan.
Sal serves a vital psychological function here. He acts as an objective sounding board that validates Walter's assessment of the threat.
Which is so important with family betrayal.
It is. There's always a deep temptation to downplay betrayal by family, to tell yourself it's a misunderstanding, to protect the family unit at all costs. Sal strips away that illusion immediately.
And he also notices Walter's tone.
Yes. Sal notices how unnervingly calm Walter sounds, which prompts Sal to insist on coming with him to the Christmas Eve confrontation. Sal knows that loud anger is just noise, but cold, quiet anger. That is the most dangerous kind of weather.
So Walter has his backup. Now he unleashes the legal counterstrike. That same afternoon, Denise Callahan, the attorney, goes to war. And she is incredibly efficient, but she has to navigate the physical realities of the legal system.
Right, because of the holiday.
Because electronic filing wouldn't clear the county systems in time before the Christmas holiday shutdown, Denise actually has her paralegal physically drive down to the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds in downtown Charlotte.
Which is huge.
They physically hand over a formal revocation of the forged power of attorney, and they place a hard fraud alert directly on the parcel of land on Independence Boulevard.
This is the legal equivalent of cutting the power to a building before a bomb goes off.
Why is the physical drive so important, though?
Because the county recording system works on a timestamp basis. By physically stamping the revocation and the fraud alert onto the parcel's title history, Denise ensures that even if Bradley somehow gets the new deed signed by the notary, when the title company goes to record it after Christmas, it will hit a brick wall.
So we can't process it.
It cannot be legally recorded. The transaction is dead in the water at the county level. The asset is frozen.
But she doesn't stop there. Denise also calls the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. She files an emergency report against Bradley, a licensed real estate agent, for potentially executing a deed transfer under a fraudulently obtained power of attorney, naming himself as the agent on his father-in-law's property without the principal present.
She is dismantling Bradley's entire professional existence in a single afternoon.
It's ruthless.
It is brilliant. She's protected the physical asset, and she has triggered a regulatory investigation that will inevitably strip him of his livelihood. And she does all of this while Bradley is presumably sitting at home, thinking he has successfully isolated Walter and won the game.
Which brings us to the climax of the story. December 24th, the ambush.
Here we go.
Let's set the scene. It's the morning of Christmas Eve. Carol decides to stay home. She explicitly says she doesn't want to watch the carnage, but she packs Walter a thermos of black coffee, as he notes in the transcript, like he was heading into a job site instead of his daughter's living room.
So good.
Walter and Sal climb into Walter's truck, the exact same old beat-up truck that Bradley constantly mocked for being older than his marriage. The poetry of that is just fantastic.
It really is.
They drive to the flashy, upscale neighborhood of Valentine, and they walk up to the door at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the notary is scheduled to arrive.
Bradley built his entire fraud on a foundation of assumed authority and Walter's assumed ignorance. Now Walter is showing up to pull the central linchpin of that delusion.
Kim opens the door. She looks surprised and then deeply uncomfortable. She says, "Dad, we talked about this, we needed space." And Walter, without raising his voice, without missing a single beat, says, "I know, but there's a commercial notary coming at 10 to notarize a deed transfer on my property, executed under a power of attorney I never knowingly signed, and I think I should be here for that." And right at that exact moment, Bradley rounds the corner from the kitchen. He's wearing a Christmas sweater from 2 years ago. He's holding a mug of coffee. And the look on his face is described in the transcripts as landing somewhere between absolute confusion and frantic calculation.
What's fascinating here is Bradley's immediate resort to his white-collar defense mechanisms. When cornered and caught red-handed in a felony, he cannot break character.
He literally tries to pitch his way out of it.
He tries to spin it using the exact same tactics he would use on a hesitant client in a boardroom.
He does. It's almost pathetic. He starts stammering, trying to play it off as routine paperwork, telling Walter it's nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
He actually tries to patronize the man whose property he is actively in the middle of stealing.
Oh, yeah, the jargon.
He calls it estate planning stuff, meant to protect family assets. He tries to hide behind corporate jargon, claiming that title work has a lot of technical language that gets misread by laymen.
Which is just insulting.
And I love Walter's response here.
Yeah.
He doesn't yell. He just looks at him, gestures to himself, and says, "Bradley, I built parking garages for 38 years. I understand technical language. What I don't understand is why you told me I was signing a storage unit release for holiday decorations, and 3 weeks later, you're listed as attorney, in fact, on a general durable power of attorney with my name on it."
This is the moment Bradley's illusion of superiority completely shatters. Walter demonstrates that he not only understands the technical language, but he has meticulously deconstructed Bradley's entire timeline of fraud.
Yeah, Bradley has nowhere to hide.
And the tension in the room is amplified because Priya, the notary, arrives right in the middle of this.
Oh, right, perfect timing.
She is standing there holding a leather folder, quietly suggesting she should probably reschedule. She becomes the professional witness to Bradley's complete unmasking.
And even then, even with the notary backing away and Walter laying out the exact timeline, Bradley tries to rationalize his crime. When Kim, who is absolutely bewildered at this point, asks what is going on, Bradley says, "It's complicated, babe. I was going to explain everything after the holidays."
Classic deflection.
He finally admits to the $340,000 cash flow issue from the Fort Mill deal. And he uses this incredible phrasing. He says, he thought if they restructured the ownership on your dad's lot just temporarily, we can cover the earnest money, and nobody would even know.
We have to pause on that word. Restructured.
Yeah, what does that say about him?
That single word is a masterclass in the psychology of white-collar crime. Criminals of this specific type rarely view themselves as thieves or bad people. They use sterilized corporate language to distance themselves from the morality of their actions.
So they don't feel like criminals.
Exactly. Bradley doesn't see himself as stealing $1 million property from an elderly man who worked his whole life for it. In his mind, he is a sophisticated businessman encountering a temporary liquidity crisis and Walter's land. It's simply an unutilized, inefficient asset on a balance sheet.
Just sitting there doing nothing.
Right. He views it as a pool of capital that he, the smarter financial mind, has a right to leverage to save his own skin. He genuinely believes that because the land was just sitting there undeveloped, it was his prerogative to put it to use. He actually looks at Walter and says, family should help family.
Which is the most toxic, breathtaking manipulation imaginable. He is weaponizing the concept of family to justify stealing from them. He's saying, you should have helped me, so I just helped myself.
It's disgusting.
But Walter is completely immune to it. He lets Bradley talk. He lets him spin his wheels. He doesn't raise his voice once. And then Walter coldly drops the hammer. He lists the consequences that are already in motion.
He lays out the trap.
He informs Bradley that the county already has a physical fraud alert stamped on the deed, that the power's attorney is legally voided, that the North Carolina Real Estate Commission was notified that morning and is opening an investigation, and finally that Denise Callahan will be filing a formal police report for forgery that afternoon if the notary appointment proceeds for one more minute.
It is a total, undeniable checkmate. Walter didn't come to argue, he came to deliver the verdict.
Right.
By preemptively securing the asset at the county level and triggering the legal and regulatory traps before he even knocked on the door, Walter removes any possibility of Bradley negotiating, gaslighting, or maneuvering his way out. Bradley is left with absolutely no moves on the board.
And the reaction is profound. Bradley goes completely silent. His verbal spin machine just breaks down. He has nothing left to say. And Kim. The source material notes that she sits down slowly on the arm of the couch, looking at her husband like she is seeing him from a great distance.
Oh, man.
She realizes in that moment that she is married to a complete stranger.
The betrayal she must have felt is just staggering. Not only did her husband attempt to steal her family's primary asset, but he manipulated her into actively participating.
Right, the phone call.
He made her make that devastating phone call to keep her parents away. He made her the unwitting accomplice to her own family's destruction.
Let's follow that destruction because we need to talk about the aftermath.
Right.
The hammer doesn't just fall on Christmas Eve. It completely crushes Bradley's life over the next 8 months. The legal process is swift and brutal. Let's break down the charges.
Yeah.
Bradley is formally charged with uttering a forged instrument and attempted financial exploitation of an elderly adult under North Carolina law.
Those are serious, serious felonies. Uttering a forged instrument essentially means presenting a fake document as genuine with the intent to defraud.
Okay.
And the elderly adult enhancement takes into account Walter's age and their familial relationship, which significantly increases the severity of the potential sentence.
He is forced into a plea agreement to avoid actual prison time. As part of the plea, he has to preemptively surrender his real estate license before the commission's hearing can formally revoke it.
Which they absolutely would have.
Right. He's sentenced to 3 years of supervised probation, and he is ordered by the court to pay $18,400 in direct restitution to cover Walter's legal fees with Denise and the county recording corrections required to clean the title.
It's a complete dismantling of his identity. He loses his career, his reputation in the Charlotte business community is completely torched, and his freedom is heavily restricted. The very things he valued most, appearances and status, are completely stripped away.
And he loses his marriage. Kim separates from him in March, just 3 months later. The divorce is finalized by August. She moves out of that flashy neighborhood in Valentine and into a smaller place near her parents in Steel Creek.
Which is probably for the best.
Yeah. Walter notes in his interviews that it takes a lot of time and a lot of quiet, painful conversations. But he and Kim slowly rebuild their relationship. Kim eventually admits the hardest truth of all to her father. She should have questioned that storage unit folder the day Bradley brought it home.
That is a heavy emotional burden for her to carry, but acknowledging it speaks to the healing process. They are establishing a new foundation of honesty, stripping away the assumed trust that Bradley exploited.
And as for the land itself, the 4 acres on Independence Boulevard that started this whole thing, Walter sells it the following summer.
Oh, nice.
But he sells it entirely on his own terms. He sells it to a local family who wants to build a small equipment yard for their landscaping business, and he walks away with a massive $920,000.
A final, undeniable victory. He liquidated the asset when he chose, to whom he chose, proving once again that true equity means absolute control over your own destiny.
Which brings us to the resolution of our story. It's the next Christmas. We are brought full circle. The scene is back at Walter and Carol's house. The pine needles smell the same. The wrapping paper is out. Kim is there.
And no notaries.
There are absolutely no notaries scheduled anywhere on anybody's calendar. Sal Denning shows up around 4 p.m. with an unnamed bottle of brown liquor. He walks in, pours a glass, and jokes to Walter, "Well, Walt, you didn't need the whole family drama to have a good Christmas after all." And Walter simply agrees, clinking his glass.
It's a beautifully quiet scene. The storm is past, the structural stress test is over, and the building held.
So what does this all mean? The final reveal of the deep dive happens right here in the kitchen. Carol hands Walter a massive slice of her famous bourbon pecan pie, and she brings up that terrifying morning from the year before. She looks at him and says, "You know, for a man who claims he's calm under pressure, you sure went quiet for 4 whole minutes at that kitchen table."
And this is where we get the greatest punchline of the entire narrative.
Walter takes a bite of pie, looks at her and says, "I was doing math."
Man, I love that.
Carol tells him to do it out loud next time because he scared her half to death, and Sal laughs so hard he nearly drops his plate. But that phrase, "I was doing math," is so brilliant.
It perfectly encapsulates his entire persona. He wasn't in shock. He wasn't paralyzed by the emotional betrayal of his son-in-law. He was calculating the exact trajectory of his response.
Exactly.
Much like calculating the load-bearing requirements of a steel beam, he was calculating the legal, financial, and emotional load required to completely crush Bradley's plan. It is the ultimate triumph of blue-collar pragmatism and patience over white-collar deception and haste.
It really is. And it brings us to our final takeaway: the immense power of remaining calm under fire. This story proves that true leverage isn't about flashy jobs or wearing a suit or, spinning complex webs of corporate jargon. True leverage is about having a solid foundation, financially, legally, and personally.
Walter's life was built on bedrock. Bradley's life was built on sand and debt.
And when the storm came, only one structure survived.
It's a powerful reminder that your intuition is a valid, critical data point. When your gut tells you to measure the beam again, you measure it. You don't ignore it just because the person holding the tape measure is family.
Absolutely. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We live in a world where we are constantly reflexively signing digital terms of service.
All the time.
We click accept on liability waivers at the gym without reading them. We share digital access, passwords, and calendar invites with family members seamlessly, assuming a baseline of safety.
Because it's easy.
Right. But in this highly connected, deeply trusting digital landscape, how vulnerable are your own 4 acres to the people you trust the most? And if the terrible moment ever comes when your gut tells you that something is fundamentally wrong, do you have the mental discipline to sit in silence for 4 minutes, keep your emotions in check, and just do the math?